Hi ladies, I'm actually really excited to do this, so thank you for having the interest in allowing me to kind of get the practice in, because this is actually something I was wanting to do on Instagram itself. So you guys are kind of like my beta testers right now to just help me like get all of these things out and like kind of practice what I want to say when I do share these things more often on Instagram. So anyway, welcome to Tarot 101. I'm actually really excited about this in general for a very specific reason. And I'll kind of get into more detail about it later, but because we're discussing the topic of spirituality, I think it's actually really important that we have this discussion in the chat group itself. But you'll see as I get more into what I'm talking about, there's a woman who was very popularly known within the New Age community. Her name is Doreen Virtue. And she was known for maybe the last 15 to 20 years as a really good example of what, when you think of someone who's New Age, this is the type of person that you think of. And she actually created a lot of tarot and oracle decks that are still in printing today. But basically, long story short, she went through a huge religious 180. I think she said it was back in January of 2017. She said that she had a vision of Jesus, and she basically became a born-again Christian, and she wanted to follow the teachings of Jesus and God, which is great. Like, as someone, I mean, I don't really like to call myself a New Ager, but as someone who believes in the practices that other people label as New Age, I didn't really have anything against it. I knew that Doreen Virtue was always someone who she kind of did come across as someone who was both a Christian and a New Age person, because a lot of her oracle decks did actually involve the use of angels. And she, so originally I was fine with it until I learned that she started to denounce things like tarot, things like oracle decks, and she actually even has a blog post on her blog, doreenvirtue.com, where she has what she calls the A to Z list of New Age practices or things or beliefs that if you are a follower of, or if you're trying to get into the kingdom of heaven, you need to give up right away, because immediately these are things that are devil worshiping, basically. So I wanted to start with that because I wanted to tell all of you that because we're starting to have this conversation, and as you're doing more research yourself into these topics, you might find this in your research. And it's important that we know about it so that we're able to discuss it, and also so that you know that you're allowed to come to your own conclusion about it whatsoever. I guess I'll get more into detail about it later, but my personal belief is that going from New Age to, and it doesn't even have to be Christianity, but basically any kind of religion that there's a lot of fear-based, conformity, surrendering kind of talk, it's not a belief that I subscribe to. And so there's a lot of questions in the New Age community, like, are we okay to still continue using Doreen Virtue's decks that she created? Are we automatically sinners if we agree to do these practices, and so on and so forth? And so again, that's why I'm saying that you need to come to that own conclusion, but yes. Okay, with that said, I am going to introduce to you tarot decks and oracle decks. Now, in my opinion, these are literally just tools, like I've said. These are tools that help you access your intuition, and they help you basically, in my opinion, have an inner dialogue with yourself. Now, many different card readers might say something different. Some people, they worship these things, and, that's their own prerogative. For me, it's a tool. And again, you're allowed to come to whatever conclusion you want to come to. This is an example of a tarot deck, whereas, and I said oracle decks too, right? So this is an example of an oracle deck. Now, actually, let me get one that's a bit more like general. It's like the one that's usually good to start out with when you're getting used to reading tarot for the first time. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 decks in my possession currently. So this is a tarot deck. This specific deck is called the Radiant Wider Weight. And you can see when you're looking at the pictures, I love this card. Oh, this is the card of abundance. When you look at the cards, they're very vibrant in color. There's a specific story going on, and there's characters that people can relate to. And as we go on in all of these things, I'll tell you about how different cards are related to different astrological signs, the different types of symbolism within the tarot, the different types of numerology within the tarot. Like the symbolism and the like inception of it all is like insane. It's like a concept within a concept within a concept. So this is an example of a tarot deck, right? This is an example of an oracle deck. Tarot decks will always have 78 cards in their deck. And oracle decks, they can always differ because basically they're a individual's creation of different concepts, ideas, things that you can use as an oracle deck. So I would say that tarot is kind of like more specific. It's something that tells a story, and these are kind of like, the oracles are kind of like summaries or major takeaway lessons is how I usually like to describe them. So here's a few examples. You can see that they're kind of like ideas or life lessons, chapters, that kind of a thing. Here's another one, authority. Energies, different types of energies that we experience in life. That's what I would say. So there's examples of tarot and oracle, right? So here's another example of a tarot deck. This one is called the Sorcerer's Tarot. And some people that I read for, they like to call this the Saruman deck from Lord of the Rings, because he looks like Saruman. Gosh, I'm really bad at remembering that, whatever. So here's like, let me see if I can show you. So here's what the Magician looks like in this deck, right? And then let me see if I can find the Magician in the Radiant Wider Weight. So basically the idea is that they have the exact same characters, but the difference is in the way in which the artist portrays the card, right? So each card can have a different energy to it, a different way in which you interpret the card, and so on and so forth, simply because of the way in which it was drawn in the card, right? Of course, watch, it's going to be like at the bottom of the deck. But so, like I said, there's 78 cards in the tarot deck, and it's split into two specific categories, and those categories are called the Major Arcana and the Minor Arcana. And similar to the Oracle deck, the Major Arcana are like chapters in life. It's a series of chapters in life that we go through in life, and it's actually an entire like chapter cycle, which I'm going to explain in more depth in probably a different video. But here's what, so the Magician is an example of a card from the Major Arcana, right? So here's what the Magician looks like in the Radiant Wider Weight deck, and then in the Sorcerer's Tarot. So you can compare the two, and you can see the similarities and the differences. Like you can see that they're both holding up a double flame candle, and then they both have their tools lower below them, and their hands are in the similar position, their stance is in a similar position, their clothes, you know. So you can really analyze to that extent of detail and then interpret something completely different in the way that in which you're reading the cards. So that's pretty cool. Here's another example of an oracle deck. This is actually one of Doreen Virtue's decks, and so that's why I wanted to preface this talk with what I was talking about earlier. And I actually decided that I've wanted to continue using Doreen Virtue's decks because I believe that when she did create these decks, she came from a place of love and a place of inclusivity. And so that's why I've decided to continue working with them. So you can see, be assertive is an example, listen to your intuition. And it's just, these are such positive messages that I don't personally understand, but again, it's not my place to judge where she was coming from in order for her to say that she was denouncing all of these things. But that's not our purpose in this life. In any lives, we're not here to judge other people. We're only here to experience the world and then make our conclusions and decisions on our own, on how we choose to live our own lives and go from a place of love, right? So that was Doreen Virtue's deck, and then this last deck is one that my grandmother gave to me. It's called the Inner Peace cards. So this is the box in which it came in. I usually don't keep the boxes, but I like this one mainly because I have a way to carry the others, and this one I just got recently, so I don't have a way otherwise to carry it. So what does this one say? I treasure all of the experiences I've had in my life. I treasure all of the experiences I've had in my life. So, you know, just different little sayings and things like that. Positive things. So that's kind of like Tarot 101. Like, what's the difference between an oracle deck and a tarot deck? Next, tomorrow, I'm going to go more in depth into what the difference between the major arcana and the minor arcana is. Like I said, the major arcana is like a step-by-step process in which an individual goes through a specific life chapter or even their entire life story, and you'll kind of see what I mean when we go through the pictures. And then the minor arcana is actually where the 52 card playing deck was born from. The minor arcana, I think it's, well, the major arcana is 22, so what is that? 56 cards is the minor arcana. And just like your regular playing deck, you have your numbers and then you have your different suits. So this is the 3 of Swords. This one is the card for heartbreak. And then the 7 of Pentacles is another example. So just like hearts, spades, clubs, diamonds, you have pentacles, swords, cups, wands. And so each of those different suits have a different energy style to them. It's in the elements. So cups is water, swords is air, pentacles is earth, and wands is fire. Okay, so I think that's good enough for now. There's a little bit of an introduction into this world. If you are interested, I would encourage you to just understand what I'm talking about with the Doreen Virtue thing, because I think that that's going to potentially be an important topic of conversation for the group in general. And then also just hop on YouTube and see what other people are saying about it and what their opinions are about it. And again, take from it what you will. You may choose not to purchase any of her decks. You may decide that it's okay, but it's important that you know about it, specifically because she had such a prominent presence within the New Age community. She has like 10, 15 decks that she's created on her own, which is a big deal. It's a big deal in and of itself to create one oracle deck, let alone 15, you know? So she had a really big influence, and she still has a really big influence. And she had a lot of people that followed her for New Age that ended up following her into Christianity, and that's fine. But again, I think it's important that you educate yourself on it so that you don't ever feel like you're doing something wrong, because I don't believe that would be the point of these decks existing in the first place. But then that would bring me down this whole existential conversation of whether or not I believe in hell, which I don't. So I'm gonna leave it here. If you guys want to talk more about it after I finish this video, I can chat with you guys there. So thanks for watching. I'm really excited to be able to share this with you all. Hopefully you picked out some good pieces of information, and I'm excited to pick up again tomorrow. Bye.